G'day all, I'm Graham Sanders and I live at Townsville, North Queensland. That's where latitude 19 crosses the east coast of Australia. I want to talk about positioning your beehives, considering global warming is starting to have an effect on our climate and especially on bees in the tropics. And I raise this question because, as you can see, say on a picture here, we just had a heat wave come through the tropics over 45 degrees Celsius, most unusual, and as you can see, even though it's a drizzly wet day, 2 weeks ago this heat wave came through, it was sustained, it certainly killed plant life, as you can see all through here, and trees and everything else. And it also killed beehives. And this is becoming very common in the tropics, that these heat waves that we never used to get are starting to come through. Dry heat, long sustained periods of heat, ultra high minimums. And they are causing stress to bees that are not used to this sort of environment. Some bee species are good. Our good old tetragonula Hocking's eyes, they force air through the hives, so they're more than capable of handling these heat waves. But even I lost some hives. But more importantly, hives like sapiens and clyperius in the tropics, they drop dead by the hundreds, and external tubes melting off walls. So I think it's time to visit what we need to do about this. Now, to start off, I'm making the video now. It's early morning, drizzly wet rain, so you're not going to see bees, so I thought I'd do a thing on location. So I'm making this video because I'm getting some new clyperius hives shortly, so I thought I'd talk about location. Let's first look at hives in locations that died. Here's one that really went downhill, something chronic. You'll notice that all my beehives are up high, and that's because this heat wave showed that it wasn't direct heat that caused it. So before I talk about what's causing these problems to the bees and what we've now got to consider this beehive. It's next to a metal fence, yet it's under shade, not a problem. Swing around. In past videos I used to have a beehive here, next to the wall, above an air conditioner. This one carked it as well. It's up high, again avoiding heat from the ground, in total shade, but it died of the heat. Note, there's nothing above it or anything like that, it was just in shade, no trees around here. Okay, where's another one? Here's another one that also suffered. Again, this one's in quite good shade, good distance above the ground, but the hive here got cooked and it's going to have to be rescued and whatever. Note again, this one next to a wall, next to pavers, stuck in a corner, no airflow whatsoever. Let's look at hives that survived quite swimmingly through 45 plus heat for 3 or 4 days and see how they survived. The tower hive at the back here, so strong in fact that I took one of the dead hives and inducted it to this strong hive at the back to get it back to life, and it's back to life as you can see there. I think little buzzy bees starting to come out first thing in the morning in between the rain breaks. But it's against a wall, alright, still in the shade, but what's the difference on this hive that allowed it to survive? Well, we can see lots of trees, lots of cover on there, lots of vegetation all around it. Let's go to another tower hive. It too up under an awning against a wall, but you can see this bugger's under trees all over the place. Nice. It survived fully on. Bees coming out of that one now that the rain stopped. Let's try one more. I think you're getting a theme to this. This concrete hive. It's certainly going gangbusters. In fact, I'll be taking some brood out of this. It's only 2 weeks after the heat wave, and it didn't even know it had one. Again, bees starting to emerge first thing after the rain. But again, I just got to look up. Under trees, lots of vegetation, moist, damp. And we get back to these burnt vegetation here coming out of the trees, and we can see where the problem lies. Because this is all in shade. These ferns don't grow in the sun, and yet they're burnt to a crisp. And these young trees here, burnt to a crisp, next to a wall, not in the shade. Oh, not under the trees, I mean. It's in the shade, but not under the trees, where others are fine. And so, I believe in the tropics, gone are the days of just positioning a hive in the shade. In the past, we could just stick a hive in the shade. Hey, not a problem. The bees will maintain their temperatures, especially species that blow air through their hive. They can perfectly handle that. But without additional help, radiant heat, that's heat that heats up an area and adds to the temperature around the hive, that's enough with these heat waves in the tropics to kill bees. So while this hive has survived many years in the shade, with heat waves, the fence is enough to re-radiate even more heat, cook the bees. Same as we swing around up under here, under the house awning. Many years, not a problem in the world, but because absolutely nothing to help it, the walls heated up and the solar panels heated up, re-radiated heat back to the hive. And this is for species that can control, or at least move air through the hive. Many tropical species, like sapiens, like Clypereus, can't move air through the hive, so they even suffer more from this sort of effect. So, the plants out the front without going back. Again, re-radiated heat coming from the walls. Cook those ferns. Cook those trees. You're getting the idea of what I'm talking about here. We're going to have to position our hives now, taking into account that you've got to get them off the ground. What if you can't get them off the ground? I've shown that even having the hives nice and high is no protection. Well, the next best thing you can do is have grass, vegetation around the hive. That helps heaps. Stops the re-radiating of the heat. So having the grass around the bottom has helped save this hive. Where at the one way at the back on the wall there, re-radiated heat on pavers, just on pavers like this, was enough to cook the hive on this location. So we had the wall radiating heat, pavers radiating heat, put it together, well, that stuffed it well and truly. But what's the biggest thing I think you've got to consider now in the tropics, and especially for species that don't force air through the hive, but also for hawks, it's going back over this way. Trees. got to consider having trees nearby to help your bees survive. All my hives that survived had three main things in common. In the shade, definite, no question about it. Nice ground cover, grass, weeds. Crap, yeah, I got a messy yard, don't bloody toss me on it. But the third thing, the evaporative cooling of trees around the hives helped save them and brought the temperature down enough to allow the bees to survive. This is from anywhere in the tropics, even in the wet tropics, even in areas that have vast rainforest. I'm in the dry tropics. Conditions like this over here where there's no trees about, cooked them. They're going to go from there. So I'm going to look at putting my beehives and relocating them in areas where it's nice and shady. So for an example, this hive that came from just up here that I've inducted and now it's got new brood in it and firing on, I've already set it up. There's a nice big mango tree. Crawl under here, crawl through here. You'll see I've positioned a pot right underneath the mango tree. Guess where it's going? Right here. It's right under the tree. It'll get a roof to keep the rain off. Ideal location. Even more so for hives like Clyperius. And speaking of which, I've got to position that somewhere as well. This sort of rainforesty environment I've got is ideal. A stand will probably go there. Although it will probably go and still fit okay, nicely, where that hive, that sapiens hive that I lost, here. You can see that hive there? It may go there. Again, lots of vegetation about. It's going to just do well there. So even in the wet tropics, where they're nesting in walls, in the sun or in the shade, under a pergola or whatever, you're going to have to really consider the prospects of changing that, getting the relative humidity up. So I'll say one last thing about that. The heat wave we got was only 10% humidity, 45 degrees for about 3 days. It was that dry humidity that, even though a lot of these areas were wet, was able to, if I go through out back into the sun, able to cook and help dry out plants like that. If we go back over here again, and yet, as I said, they're out of the shade, and I mean not the shade, out of the effects of the tree. But as soon as I walk into the effects of the tree, no effect whatsoever in this shady, beautiful area through here. It's the humidity that and evaporative cooling that these trees and vegetation does. It increases the humidity of your bees. So, what's the advice I'm saying at the end? You've got to look at the environment in total as to where you place your bees, because unfortunately the heat waves are just going to keep on coming, and no longer, I believe, unless you want to risk losing bees and try to baby them, can you just sit there and just put them in shade anymore, or a shady brick wall or everything else. You're going to have to look at positioning them to take advantage of the local environment, because getting 10% humidity, 45 in the tropics, is so unusual. It kills everything, and it will kill your bees. So consider that from now on. In my next video, I get my Clyperius hive, and I'll show you where I position it.